All right, we're here at episode 49 of Kenversations, and I'm really excited to have Jake Sloan. Is that how you say the last name, correct?
Yep.
And Jake is a content creator, YouTuber, videographer. I don't know if that's what you would call yourself, but we met through the marketing world. You were a main videographer at Beacon when I came on. And, you know, I've been able to just see what you do through social over the last 3 years. And it really motivated me to have you on because what I see is someone that's really doing what they love and doing it at a high level, which that's what I appreciate most. And so I'm really glad that you said yes to coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And so tell me about this story. Like, what got you into content creation, videography? Like, where's the story start for you with that?
It's a long, it goes way back probably into my late teens, even when my grandmother gave me a film camera and I started just messing around with it. And at that time I was living in Talkeetna, so I was working with rubbing shoulders with a lot of really good photographers. And I was always asking them questions about, you know, what makes a camera do, or what makes things look like this in film. And because the camera I had was completely manual and I knew nothing about it starting out and then just jumping in. So I learned a lot about that kind of stuff then. And then about, I think, it's probably 20, 21. I just put it away and forgot about it and moved on and spent 20 years doing a lot of just, you know, work, like life, getting married, having kids, stuff like that. And then, was it like maybe five years ago or so, my wife and I both lost our jobs at the same time. And which is oddly enough around the time that Beacon kind of came into the picture. And so I was doing construction to make ends meet because at that point, nobody wanted to hire anybody, even with advanced degrees, for like more than $15 an hour, $20 an hour, which is insane. You can't live on that with a family. And so I had started looking at other ways of making income. And I knew at that point that I really wanted to work toward making income that wasn't necessarily tied directly to my time, because I had done that for 20 years and really realized I don't want to say the trap, but it's very limited, you know, unless you move into certain career fields that have extremely high levels of pay based on time, you're always very limited on what you can do. And in most of my jobs, I had figured out that I was really good at figuring out really efficient ways of doing things. But it never got rewarded in the sense of like, you're doing this really well, so we're going to reward you. It was like, oh, you have a whole bunch of extra time now. We're going to add a whole bunch more to your plate. Right. But it didn't necessarily reflect on, we're also going to give you a raise because now you're doing a lot more work. So those kind of things had started me off on this path of looking for ways to make income that wasn't necessarily tied to my time. Of course, with the internet, passive income is a huge buzzword. I don't think there's any really truly passive income out there.
I love that.
It's a great buzzword. And there is, to an extent, of the sense of like, you're not working physically directly, and that is not necessarily tied to your income. But real true passive income in the sense of what a lot of people think is doesn't exist.
Sure.
Maybe unless you're extremely wealthy already. So, looking at this way of going, okay, there's got to be ways to make income not tied to my time, and also doing things I love, because I didn't like doing construction. I had the skill set from my dad, which I appreciated, but I didn't enjoy it. And so one of the things I was doing was like going off and doing these adventures with my kids. And at that point I was kind of getting back into photography because iPhones had come out with great cameras at that point. And just more, but it was more about documenting the journey with my kids and wanting to leave them memories. And so I was posting these videos on YouTube, not really even for public consumption, just to like go, you know, in 10 years, hey, here's memories of stuff that we did together, hiking around the mountains here and stuff like that. And as part of that, I was like, oh, I want to get a drone. I want to be able to capture the views and the aerial pictures of, or a video of Alaska and me and my kids doing this stuff. So I bought one of the early foldable, somewhat portable drones and started filming that. And those videos really started getting traction with people because it was early adoption, and it was also a very new kind of drone. Nobody had done a foldable drone yet, and I happened to get one of the first, maybe say 100,000 that they shipped out, and then I think they didn't realize that there'd be probably like 2 or 3 million orders, and so having one of the only ones out there and starting to like put videos out about it really perked my interest of like, wow, there's a whole business model behind this YouTube thing, which is pretty much my heavy focus. And so I started pursuing that and looking at it and trying to figure out like, how are people making this work as a full-time income and passive income? And so it took a while for me to wrap my mind around how the business model of doing stuff like that really works. Partly because, I'm not going to lie, I have lots of gray hair. I'm 40-something. And my dad taught me very heavily on, like, work is you physically sweating, laboring away, which I appreciated because it gave me a really good work ethic. But at the same time, it's like, wait, there's a whole nother way that you can work and make income, but it's not work in the classic sense of, like, what I was taught. And so it took a few years for me to figure that out, just because I had to take and recreate or create new mindsets in my own mind of how to look at it and approach it. And then just grappling with the whole like online realm, the reach, the distribution, the like how do you tie things together and monetize, and the different ways of doing that. And because it's still kind of very much the Wild West of like the creator economy. It's almost anything goes. So, and it was about that time that I started working with Beacon. And I really, it was fantastic because both of the owners of Beacon, they were awesome to work with. At the same time, while I was working with them, it's about then that I really realized, like, I'm a terrible employee. Not because I'm not a good worker, but because I'm not wired to be an employee.
Right.
So we had lots of conversations about that, and they were amazing at going, yeah, you're right. Like, you're really not cut out to work as an employee, but we still want to work together. And so I think that's about probably when you started coming in the picture with Beacon too. And so I really, really appreciate that both Adrian and Jennifer were like, yeah, we can see that. And so let's explore other ways we can work together and still pursue this. And so that's where I am today now.
Right. So I want to go back to, so you said 5 years ago, so 2018, was that when you maybe got your first drone?
It might have been 2017 or 2016. It's been a while.
So so 2016, you got your first drone, and it was for sheer personal use.
Yeah.
You wanted to capture these adventures, which there's a whole bunch to unpack on documenting a future for your kids or your grandkids. And I could get into that, heavily, but I don't want to go down a wormhole because my ADD can. But when it came to that process and you started, putting those up on YouTube, and you said it started to take traction. Can you expand on that? Was like a video going viral, people starting to subscribe to you? Like, what was that part of the journey of you just putting stuff up out there because it was for personal, but then it started to take more of a life of its own?
So it was twofold in the sense of like, I did I consider it to be a dumb video about how to put the iPad mini into the controller of the drone. And I guess I was the first one to think about that, and it got posted on a lot of forums, and then it started getting shared, and so that one really started getting traction. At the same time, I was posting the adventures with my kids. I was also posting some charity work I was doing as a Star Wars character. I don't know if you want to dive into that or not, but and just purely because of the name Star Wars and the characters I was dealing with in these like vlog videos about the charity work we were doing, that gained a lot of traction.
Wow.
And so between those two things, I was like, wow, there's this whole other world of being able to reach and communicate with people that I had never considered before. And so that really is what kind of shot me down the path. But as far as like the photography and drone stuff, that first really, I mean, I literally grabbed my iPhone 6 and went down to my basement and like filmed myself. Hey, this is how you put the controller or the iPad in the controller. And when that really started gaining traction, I was like, wow. So then I started doing a few more videos like about the drone, going out and like, hey, this is what it can do, or this is how to do this with it, or whatever. And just because there was so much pent up demand for that drone, because they drastically underestimated how many orders they would get for the unit right off the bat, it really kind of opened that door for me to get my foot in and then start to really realize like there is a whole side of YouTube that I never considered beyond like, posting videos for my kids, or like lots of people watch cat videos, or sure.
So when that first huge traction happened, was it like all of a sudden you started getting a ton of notifications, you started seeing the whole bunch of subscribers going on, like you get monetized? Like what was it like? You're like, oh, this is a thing that I need to take from more just posting for my kids to I need to pay attention to this.
So yeah, a lot of it was I started to get more subscribers, and that kind of perked up of like I was getting lots of interaction online, lots of questions about the drone, lots of troll comments too, because that's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
And subscribers. And so when that started happening, I started digging into like finding some YouTube gurus, growth gurus, online marketing people, and really watching their stuff and studying their stuff of like, how are people looking at this as a business? Because I just could not wrap my mind around the fact that you can post videos online that people watch for free, and then somehow you make money off that. Like it just did not, I mean, it was like the most cognitive dissonance I think I've ever experienced in my life, where I felt like my brain was just hitting a brick wall of like, this makes no sense to me at all. I do not understand how this is even work, and I do not understand how you get paid from this. Right. So that's where it took me a lot of time, of a lot of trial and error of posting videos that did nothing, get 10 views, and then posting other ones that would get a few thousand views. And okay, what was the difference between these two videos? Well, this one was titled with this and had this content in it, and this one was something completely different. Mm-hmm. And so it was a lot of trial and error.
Sure.
And then also a lot of really applying every spare minute I had of like getting up at 4 a.m. and watching tutorial videos or reading about what people were doing in the online marketing space to make things work, and trying to figure out the business model behind it of different streams of income, affiliate marketing, and all of that kind of stuff to really, I mean, literally build new pathways in my own brain of thinking about how to go about making kind of not even making what I'm doing today, but even just figuring out a roadmap to get to where I am today was probably 3 years of posting stuff online, and some having success and a lot having no success.
So how much content would you say you put out before you earned a check? And it was like $6. I'm sure it wasn't anything crazy, but like what was that like that time frame?
So I think it's probably a year, maybe 18 months or so before I got a check. And it was probably, I don't remember what it was then. I think it might have been like they had $100 floor that you had to at least get $100 before they would pay you out. So it was probably like 3 or 4 months of.
But then you got $100
income.
check.
But then I had a $100 check,
and that was from YouTube.
That was from YouTube. That was from AdSense. So the advertising on YouTube, and I think about that time is when I started to figure out, okay, you can sign up for affiliate accounts and then get a percentage from stuff people ordered. But at that point, I had probably put out 150 videos, maybe of content, and I was getting up at 4 a.m. to like put videos together, edit, learn. Try it, like just apply myself in this, because then 8, 9 o'clock, I had to be either working construction that day or working for Beacon that day, depending on what the schedule was or what was going on. And at least for me, I'm a morning person. I'm not a night person. So if I want to do something creative, or if I want to learn something or apply myself to something, it needs to be in the morning, because that's when my brain is functional that way. By 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon, I'm there, but it's just not nearly the same amount of mileage as far as learning something new or working on something. It's a lot more of a struggle for me to do that then. But yeah.
How real or how much more weight did it have on you when that $100 check hit the bank account, right? Like when you were like, that's $100 that I just got paid for something that I'm doing around my 9 to 5, right? It's not even work, right? At this point, yes, it's work. Like getting up early, doing it, it's all work, but like it's something you're really getting a lot of enjoyment from. So how real did that make it to you that when you got that $100?
It made it really real. And it was also like giving somebody just a tiny hit of a drug.
Sure.
And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a second.
Right.
What was that? I want to know what that was. And so it was probably right around then, or maybe a month or two later, when I had, kind of started to understand the whole idea and was getting a concept of how things work in an online business and with creator economy, content distribution, stuff like that. That I was talking with my wife, and she's like, well, what are you going to do? Like, do you think this is a viable thing or not? And I was like, I really don't know. I'm like, but what I think I need to do is I'm going to do this for 3 years, a video every single week for 3 years. And get to the end of 3 years, if nothing has drastically changed, I'll just move on and, go see if I can get a job working where I can make other people's lives miserable. Right. I don't take any offense at this, but I was like, I'll go work at the DMV and just like have a miserable life for the rest of my life. But I will have tried at least. Sure. But we had done other things like that for 3 years where it was really, really difficult. And we had made a commitment to go like, we're going to do this for this long and see what happens. And those things didn't work out.
Right.
But I knew I was like, I've done hard stuff for 3 years. I know I can do it for 3 years. And if it's one video a week, I can manage that. It'll still be a push, but I can do that. And then at the end of 3 years, like if nothing happens, okay, I gave it my best shot. What more can you do? And then I think so it started going off. And for the first year, it was very like, maybe $100, maybe $25, maybe $50, something like that. Very minimal, a ton of effort compared to what I was getting out of it.
Right.
But again, it was all looking at going, now I want to build this into something down the road that will be beneficial for me and for the family. And so it was maybe toward the end of year 2 when stuff all of a sudden started kind of getting traction. And I watched my subscriber base start to grow really consistently and the video views were growing really consistently. Now, I think that's a function of both. I was learning and understanding how to do things on YouTube in a way that worked, and also how to connect with people online via video and stuff like that. And then also it was a function of like, it takes YouTube a while, the AI in YouTube, to figure out what you are about and who wants to watch your stuff.
Right.
Because ultimately that's the whole design behind all of YouTube stuff or Google search results or anything, is to figure out what somebody wants and when they want it and to give it to them.
Right.
And so you're putting out a video about Swiss cheese. It's going to look for people who want to watch videos about Swiss cheese, right, and also when they might want to watch that, right, around dinner time or something like that.
So, I mean, there's so much to take away from that. I think the first thing that I think is really important for people to know is that it is an uncommon thing to think that you're going to say 3 years, right? But like you said, is you've done hard things and committed to stuff in the past that didn't work. And I've always agreed with that mindset, right? Like, I think it's important to commit to something, no matter what it is. Like, if you want to write a blog, right, I'm going to commit for a period of time. I've always said like 60 days, but like, I'm going to write a blog every week for 60 days. And at the end of 60 days, like, what could happen is that you don't like writing, you don't like the process, you don't like posting it to the internet, you don't like managing your website. But the one thing, no matter what you gain from it, is you learn you can do something that's hard.
Yeah. And
that understanding in itself, even though you don't like anything about it, you didn't get any money from it, but understanding you can learn new things, mm-hmm, and you can do hard things, will shift your entire perspective of how you go about things.
Yeah.
And so the fact that that you did that 3 years, one, that's a long time, but two, that you had that philosophy, I absolutely believe that's what's led to the success that you've achieved.
Yeah. And I think a big key to that too, for me at least, was we're an extremely failure adverse society. We run away from failure. It is like the worst possible thing that could happen in your life is you fail at something. Right up into this and right before my wife and I both lost our jobs, one of the things that we had been working on for 3 years failed spectacularly. I mean, not publicly, but publicly in the circles we were in at the time.
Sure.
And so working through not just just the repercussions of like having this big failure, quote unquote, of what we were working on to try and create something out of business wise, was a lot of me dealing with my sense of like, why am I so afraid to fail? Failure, I mean, it took a while, but coming around to the fact that failure is the best teacher you can have. There's ways to fail that are safe. You don't want to go like jumping off a cliff without a parachute and without training with somebody that knows what they're doing. You don't want to do some of those things but in a lot of those things, like I grew up climbing mountains with my dad a lot. And so one of the things you learn mountain climbing really early on is how to self-arrest. And it's where you take your ice pick and you have your ice cleats on, and you basically get yourself on 3 points of contact. So you have the toes of each of your ice cleats and your ice pick, and you dig it into the snow as fast as you can with the ice so that you stop sliding down the mountainside as fast as you possibly can. Well, so the way we learned that was we went up on a mountainside, and then and we're all roped up, so it was safe. But at the same time, like there's a very real aspect of you could slide hundreds of feet down the mountainside before that rope stops you from sliding down. And then we would start walking up, and then my dad would just yank the rope to rip us off our feet and see how fast we could learn to self-arrest. That's failing in a safe way, because you definitely fail once or twice the first few times. But you figure out very quickly how to not fail. And I think in that sense that failure is one of the best teachers, because when you have something that leaves a strong impact in your mind, is like failure does, you rarely will ever repeat that mistake again.
Right.
And so part of it with YouTube was for me going out, like, I'm going to fail a bunch. And I think if I hadn't gotten over that fear of failure, in realizing that failure is actually one of the best teachers you can have, that I'm going to fail a ton. A bunch of videos I'm going to put out, maybe 100-something videos I'm going to put out, are probably going to do nothing and just be terrible videos. But I have to get through that process of failing, learning from what I didn't do right, and maybe what I did do right, and then implementing something different in the next video. Yeah. And it took a while, but we got there.
And not everyone might not have this mindset, but the cool benefit, because a lot of people, you're like 100 videos, that's such an effort to lose. But the cool thing about, especially content creation, and at least I've found that is that if 101 goes viral, you actually still will benefit from those 100, right? Even if they're not as good, and even because if one goes super viral and a lot of people are then funneling to you, what happens? If you did a really good video, it's not that the first 100 were bad, maybe some of them were, but YouTube didn't know how to show them to people, so you weren't. But now a whole bunch of people have found you, and then they're engaging through all this other content you've had in the past. Yeah. So it's not a complete waste, right? Yeah. You actually still benefit from it, at least from my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is part of it. And that was part of my reasoning of going into 3 years, was I knew I needed to build a back catalog of work that if I did have a video go really viral, it's like, well, what else am I going to point people to if they want to see more about whatever I do, whether it's about a camera or drone or, adventuring in Alaska or something like that. Like, if all I have is one video and it goes super viral, like, am I going to be like those bands that is the one-hit wonders? Like, they're amazing, everybody knows about them, and then 3 weeks later, nobody ever hears from them again. I'd rather be in it for the long haul than just have one big hit and disappear.
Totally, yeah. I know it's not the same thing, but I remember Eminem said it was easy, or Dr. Dre and Eminem said it was easier to get a one-hit wonder than it was to have multiple platinum records, right?
Yeah.
Because so many people could hit once,
right?
But then the effort it takes to repeat that over and over again is way harder, and they chose that path, obviously. But so I think the same thing applies here. So let's talk about, okay, you have momentum, you have the plan, you're committing to it. When did it become like, okay, now it's past a commitment, like, I'm going to do this forever. Or like, I'm earning an income through XYZ affiliates or whatever, where you're like, okay, long haul, here we go. I'm not going to go work at the DMV.
Yeah. And that was probably maybe halfway through year 2 or beginning of year 3, which was oddly enough right around the time that COVID started and everything kind of changed in our world anyway. Because at that point I wasn't earning a lot of money, but I was earning enough to go like, okay, if I miss a month of work or I don't have projects come in, with Beacon or something like that, like it's not going to kill us because we don't have zero income coming in anymore. Like we'll have to be careful and we'll have to, use some savings, but we still do have this other income coming in on the side. So when that started happening and all of a sudden I'm looking at this going, wow, there's steady income coming in off of this, which I think it was probably right around middle of year 3 or so when it was significant enough that it really kind of caused me to look at it every month and go, what, like, how did this happen? It was just a couple years ago where I was putting videos out and me was watching it 10 times and then maybe somebody else, like that was the views it got. So that, when that happened, and then when COVID hit and all of that, that's when I really realized, like, yeah, this is, it's not only is it working, it wasn't to the level I wanted it yet, but it was very real that, yeah, it's working, and there's potential here to keep going down this road. And so I really started leaning into it more during COVID, and then also because of a lot of the drone work I was doing. It led for open doors to be able to start doing some of the other stuff I do now, which is go work on movies or TV shows or with some big brands, creating commercials for them like Caterpillar or Bell Helicopter, stuff like that. Because when everything started shutting down because of COVID, a lot of people realized, well, we can still use drones because we don't have to have a lot of people in close proximity with drones. Like you can have one person standing over there flying the drone, one person over here watching a monitor and calling out what they need, and you can still do a lot of work that way. And so that kind of opened these doors up to where all of a sudden I was getting calls from, all over the country to come and do drone work, which was odd because I kind of figured like everything else, it was just everything was going to be done in quiet for a while. And, I'd spend a lot of time out in the wilderness of Alaska filming YouTube videos and hope for the best.
Right. So tell people, because you've said it a couple times and I haven't talked about a lot of it. I'm very familiar with it, but explain affiliate marketing.
Okay. So affiliate marketing, I mean, in its simplest form is you go sign up with a site like Amazon, which is probably the most well-known because it's also such a huge retailer. You sign up with them and then you take certain links that they give you for, certain products. So in my case, let's say I work with, a certain camera or a certain microphone or something like that. I'll go on my Amazon affiliate account and get a link to that product and then put it in the description of my YouTube video or on my Instagram post or whatever that is. And then anytime people click that link, they don't pay any extra. They get the product but Amazon gives you, a kickback of, maybe 2%, maybe 5%, depends on the products and kind of all that stuff. And that is, I think, where the idea of passive income comes in, because in the sense of that, like, people can click that link at 1 a.m. and then you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I made $5 or $10. It's not a lot, but you start adding all of that stuff up and it stacks up over time, then it can add up to be quite a bit.
Right. And people can do affiliate marketing in anything. Like you could be a hairdresser, you could be a person that makes pies. I mean, there's like anyone could do it. Like a gym owner could do it. Like, hey, you like those pair of shoes?
Yep.
There's affiliates for that. Like I think a lot of people need to just like, what do they like doing?
Yeah.
Put content out about what you like doing and then who can share it. Some people don't, some don't. Like Sure does an affiliate. Skull Candy does an affiliate, right? So like being strategic about what you have interest in and then start paying attention to that as you're putting content out gives you a huge second opportunity. You're going to put that video out on YouTube anyways.
Yeah.
Why not have a link to a couple things that people are going to want to have interest in and then go buy it through you?
Exactly. And that's kind of the mindset of the whole creator economy is you're building an audience. You're building rapport and trust with people. And so that, at least in my niche, in what I do, is I'm hopefully helping people make smart decisions when they decide they need a new camera or buy. I'm not trying to get people to buy the latest and greatest all the time. In fact, if anybody ever watches my live streams, a lot of times I'm like, well, if you have a phone, start with that. Because you don't need a $5,000 camera if you really don't know how to even take a good photo or do a good video with your phone yet. But when people are ready to make those upgrades or changes, or they have questions like, well, is this lens better than this lens? I try and provide that information in a way that's going to be helpful for them to make a good decision. And then if they do decide they want to buy one of those lenses, they can click the link and they go get the lens, and it gives me a little kickback. And so it's just, it's a whole way of like, and you're right. People can do it about anything these days. And if you're passionate about a specific subject, like put content out about it. And I mean, we have so many platforms now that you get worldwide distribution of your content. And it's just weird to think that we live in a day and age where if you like talking about baseball cards, you could make probably a really good income talking about baseball cards online from your bedroom.
Right.
It's bizarre,
Right.
But it is the economy we live in now.
And people will have to understand too, is affiliates aren't even always about selling, right? Like say PSA, right? And I happen to know about cards, right? They rate cards.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, you can have to check me, but PSA probably has an affiliate where if you have a link, they'll track traffic that you send to their website just through your content, and you get a kickback of that. There's plenty of affiliates that are that way. You don't even have to sell a product.
Yeah.
You're just creating attention for them, right? And so you're right. Like here's the cool thing about it, and it ties back into what you said in the beginning, so I'm so glad you said it. The best part about what breaks content, and I'm going to make it so personal for everyone, it's not about making money. It's about laying the future for our generations to be able to consume content for us.
Yeah.
And I like to use this example. Like, I didn't know my grandfather on my dad's side very much, but it turns out he was an entrepreneur. He owned farmland. He owned gas companies. He had all these things, and it was this really cool thing. I've only ever seen a couple pictures of him in my life.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of motivation that I inspire from that. And my question is if I could today get a huge photo album and then hear these videos talking about his gas business or doing this oil delivery for people so they could heat their homes in northern Minnesota. And I was able to get this plethora, this access to this library of stuff to learn more about my grandfather. How much would you pay for that?
Oh, yeah.
A crazy amount of money.
Yeah.
And so my motivation for creating content now, yes, an income can come from it, which is awesome. But it's about to create the future for Jordan and Jordan's kids and be able to see the family, see the content that's coming from that, and get to know those people that we don't get to see that much.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, reality is how many people get a ton of photos or videos around their grandparents or their great-grandparents?
Right.
Not.
Yeah.
But right now in the current situation, we're going to create generations of content for them to be able to consume. And guess what? Earn an income while you do it.
Yep. Yeah.
It's really cool.
And have a lot of fun and enjoy the process. Like it's really amazing, the opportunity. But also you do have to be willing to put in some work and probably fail a bunch.
Right.
And be willing to do that for a little while before any of the other stuff really starts to come around.
Right.
And so going into it with the right mindset, and that's what I love about what you said, is going into it with a mindset of like, not just what do I want to get out of this, but what do I want to lay the groundwork for, my friends, my family, my kids, my grandkids, anything like that, where it's not just about, I want to build this business and make some money on the side.
Right.
Because that is, even if it's something you enjoy, that can be a very short-lived proposition because you can burn out and you can get tired of it when you're not earning a lot of money, but you're putting time in, a lot of time. It can really quickly change from, I like this, to I really don't like this anymore.
Yeah, if you tie your purpose to something a lot bigger than yourself, it makes it easier to press through those hard times, right? Because no matter what, there's going to be hard times. But I think you and I both could agree is that if you're doing it for yourself or doing it for that future generations, there's a lot more ability for you to push yourself through it or get through that down moment than it is for working for someone else, right? Or being an employee, And so that's really cool. I would love to know, you talk and I get to see, and I follow you on Facebook, I follow you on YouTube, like you're doing some really cool things. Tell me some of just like the coolest experiences you've been able to be a part of because you chose to do this content creation world versus going working, a 9 to 5.
There's a lot.
top 2 or 3 that come to mind for you.
So so one of the top, I think probably the top one is there's a helicopter pilot here in Alaska that has a helicopter, and she reached out to me. I don't remember how exactly we connected. I think it was over Instagram somehow. And she was like, hey, I would like you to come down and spend a couple days with me in Valdez. And we're just going to go around and fly around, which one is kind of mind blowing because how many people have a helicopter that they're like, yeah, we're just going to spend a few days flying around the mountains. Like that's kind of mind blowing to begin with.
Right.
But then her thing was like, I would really like to do some air to air work with you with drones, which is, you have to be very careful because it can get into legalities and safety really quick.
Yeah.
But the fact that she was willing to do that. And so I that's probably the top of like, one, you get to go to just some mind-blowing locations.
Right.
And then working with somebody who's an extremely talented helicopter pilot, and being able to photograph and film this helicopter in some of these locations. It's
So were you driving like the drone while the helicopter's flying and stuff? Is that what you're saying you were doing?
So we would go and find someplace, stop, she would drop me off, I'd get the drones out, and then we would talk through everything we were going to do, and we'd be in radio communication the whole time, just, to be safe.
Yeah.
If you start over here and fly, I'll be at this angle from the helicopter at this altitude, following you through this movement, over this waterfall or something like that. And so that has to be one of the top experiences. And part of that was we went to this location where there's it's like, 3,000 or 4,000 foot cliff. And I'm standing like on the edge of this cliff, overlooking these huge mountains and glacier in the background, taking photos of her hovering 20 feet away from me, which is, it's probably just one of the most mind-blowing, awesome experiences I've ever had because of what she was able to do and what I was able to do with her, and what way we were able to work together in creating some just incredible imagery and incredible content. So that definitely, I think, is one of the top ones. Number 2, I think probably is maybe working with Caterpillar, which I've worked with them a few times now. But I think my favorite was they built an exact replica of the Pac-Man maze to drive their skid steers through as like the characters of Pac-Man and Ghosts. So one is like, who does that? Who excavates a giant Pac-Man maze 6 feet deep that you can drive skid steers through remotely, not
Where
with
was
people
this
in
at?
it? Is down in, they have a big facility down in Illinois.
Oh my God.
And so, we show up and they're like, we want you to do some drone work and like fly FPV through these things while we're like recreating the Pac-Man game.
Yeah.
And it was one of they do these things called cat trials where they've set a couple Guinness records and stuff.
I think I've heard of that actually.
Yeah. And so they create these just really interesting ways of showing off how their equipment can be used or work. But through these really, what seemingly is very unconnected storytelling, but it really does work well for what they're doing. So I think that was one of the fun, partly because, we spend 2 days, 3 days filming this whole storyline of the Pac-Man game, all using big Caterpillar equipment. But then at the end of the game, if you've ever played it, it like de-reses from the top where the whole thing just kind of falls apart. So their version of de-resing was bringing in 2 of the biggest bulldozers they build.
Oh my gosh.
Which is like, it was like a scene from Jurassic Park where the trees are shaking and you're waiting to see what comes. And then all of a sudden this 2-story tall bulldozer comes out the other side and just starts destroying everything in its path. So I think that was probably one of my other top ones. And then, for the other ones, I got to be part of the Avatar 2 trailer release in Niagara Falls, which was really cool.
That's a name drop. Oh my goodness.
That kind of came out of nowhere. So we spent a couple days in Niagara Falls filming because they were projecting the trailer onto this like the vapor up there and stuff. So that was really cool. Also really wild, like because it just came around so last minute. It was very just
like insane. How does that happen? Do they message you on Insta? Like where does that come from?
There's a guy I work with out of Lower 48 quite a bit, and they got in touch with him because he had done some other work with them, and I don't know exactly how it happened, but they realized they needed more crew than they had, or they wanted to provide different perspectives. So we got brought in to film and to do some drone work with them. And so it was really cool because they did the whole drone show where the drones fly up and create pictures in the sky.
Yeah.
So we got to film that, which was very, very cool. That's definitely up there. But I think probably my other favorite was doing air-to-air work in helicopters. So I was in a helicopter filming another helicopter and taking pictures, which is, I love airplanes and helicopters anyway.
Sure.
Hopefully one of these days I'll be able to get my private pilot's license. But being able to work with two extremely skilled helicopter pilots while I'm like hanging out the side taking photos is really fun, because when you're like sitting there looking like, I think if I reached out far enough, I could probably touch the other helicopter right here. And, they're just...
It's like Blue Angels with helicopters.
Yes. And, there's a lot of spinning parts and a lot of things going on really fast in a helicopter. It just is pretty wild, but also a really, really cool experience.
Yeah. I heard a crazy stat about helicopters. So my father-in-law, he works for the government, and he does a lot of pre and post trips on planes that are rented by the state, right? There's a lot of helicopters that are, leased by the state essentially. And so he has to go through and make sure that they're all up to snuff and, they're all... And he told me that, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was like 85% of all helicopters that are owned, the owners do not have the ability to fly them, right? They're owned by someone else, and some pilot of a helicopter who doesn't even own a helicopter is the one that flies it. And I was just like, it made sense, but at the same time I was like, wow, that is crazy to think about.
Yeah. Well, and so there's a little rabbit trail, and that's why it made it so kind of mind blowing that somebody who owns a really nice helicopter reaches out and is like, hey, come spend 2 days flying around Valdez with me, because it's so rare.
Right.
And a large reason for that is people think of airplanes being expensive, and I think probably they're on par with a boat. Like you're going to spend a fair amount of money to maintain them, to fly them, to do anything like that. Helicopters, like the same size airplane and a same size helicopter of like maybe say being able to fit 4 people, a helicopter is going to be minimum 4 times more expensive,
right?
Just to do the same things. They have to have way more inspections. They cost way more to run because, I mean, there's a lot more moving parts. And if any one of those moving parts goes out, you're likely going to have a really bad day. And so they are way more expensive. At the same time, like, they're incredible machines, and what they're capable of in the hands of a good pilot is really astounding. I don't think they're as unsafe as people think they are either.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think they're only as
they're as safe as the pilot who's flying.
You got it.
Them.
That's exactly. I mean, my dad's a Super Cub pilot, small planes pilot my whole life, and so I believe 100% you're only as safe as the pilot.
Yeah,
and I think that the equipment is only as dangerous or safe as the pilot's ability to be able to manipulate that equipment in the elements, right, and be able to prep accordingly. Yeah. At least that's from my experience. No, I'm actually really excited. A friend of ours, he doesn't have a set date yet, but he is coming on the podcast. His name's Chad, and he's the owner of Superman Movers, and he actually got his helicopter pilot's license, and he bought a helicopter. And he tells this crazy story because he bought it down in Washington, and he had to fly it up, and it was during COVID, and Canada was like, no, you can't fly through during COVID. Like, you can't. And like, he had to go through a lot of this rigorous like paperwork and like talk to certain people and like get on the Prime Minister's office to be able to get it. Like, it was this huge ordeal. And they were like, you can only stop here and you have to get through in like 36 hours or something. And so he has to fly from Washington to Alaska through Canada airspace. And it was this huge deal. But like, seeing what Chad did with it, I'm in the same boat as you. I was like, I totally want to get my private pilot's license someday and be able to do that. It seems like such a fun experience. So I love that. So I would love to know on the drone side of things, because I think that no one actually really understands how much we are consuming content that has drones in it, right? TV shows, movies, like I think it's all out there. How much prep do you just get a new drone and then I'm just curious because like I'm always like I'm a fascinated person of like skill, like as we're talking about pilots, how I tie this in. Like, how much time do you get like do you get on like simulators before you get into this new drone, or do you just like take out and fly it? Like, do you do a lot of prep before you start taking some of these new pieces of equipment out? Because they're expensive, they're hard to like fly, like the maneuvers. Like, what's your preparation for something like that?
So for most of the like off the shelf drones that you would buy at Best Buy or something like that, those can be almost any of them now are going to be, they're so well built and so well programmed that you could go out and, spend 3 battery packs flying in an open field, which is what I tell people, go out to no obstructions anywhere around and just be really gently flying around with your drone. 5 battery packs, and you have a pretty firm grasp of how to fly it because they've made it so consumer friendly. At the same time, anytime I get a new drone, if I'm going to be using it professionally, even one of those off-the-shelf drones, I will go out and spend 3 to 5 battery packs flying around, feeling it out, also understanding what settings make it do what, how they change. The great part is that also I get to create a lot of content about it, so that's part of that. But then understanding too, the camera, how the camera system works, where the best kind of settings are for the camera to get the picture quality and stuff like that. But then there's this whole other side of drones called FPV, which is first-person view. You wear goggles, you fly, and it is 100% on you to keep that drone in the air. There is no automated anything other than, you turn it on and the motors start spinning. And so I started getting into those because there were types of shots that I really wanted to get with drones and that I knew clients would really like that you just cannot get with any other kind of drone. And it's the type of shot of you are flying through a waterfall or down a mountainside or something like that. And it feels very much like you're sitting strapped on the nose of an airplane or a helicopter ripping through an area. And so I kind of dove down this thing where I basically learning to build and program them from scratch. It's a huge learning curve, and it's very difficult to even find YouTube information. There's a lot of information out there, but the problem is if you don't already know the language and know what you don't know, then it's really hard to even figure out what you need to know to figure out to make it work. So I started building those, and then last year, 2 years ago, I built a couple of larger ones that will put a small cinema camera on there because I had a couple of jobs with Caterpillar and other places that wanted to put a cinema camera on one of these FPV drones.
So I want to be clear. You're talking about building a drone.
Yeah, from scratch.
You're not buying a drone online.
Yep.
You are literally building and creating a program to then drive this drone, or at least bringing a program together to what's built to do it. So this is basically custom.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 100% custom. I mean, you can buy, not off the shelf, but there are builders who will build them for you. But essentially, you're buying carbon fiber frames, motors, speed controllers, flight controllers, receivers, GPS units, all that, and putting it all together and then making it all work together.
That is amazing.
And then you're going to go put a $15,000 camera on it and rip it at 90 miles an hour, in a tight space. And so one of them I did with that was literally a quarter mile out over open water and then chasing hydrofoil boat races.
Sure.
Yeah. And I kept looking at the directory if anything, I built this drone and I went out and tested it for 30 battery packs to make sure it was solid.
How much time is on a battery pack?
5 minutes-ish.
Oh, 5.
So, yeah.
That is not very long.
Because it's such high energy and it's so much speed. It just you can only, it's not a lot of battery time. You can build them so they will fly longer, but it's I'm going to run this 30 battery packs before I even put a camera on there. So I found a 3 or 4 pound dumbbell, stuck it on there for a weight to make sure I had kind of accurate weight for what the camera would be. And then I think it was back up in Hatcher Pass somewhere, trying not to destroy this multi-$1,000 drone I just built.
Oh my goodness.
And it's kind of terrifying too, because it's 8 motors, 8 propellers that are it sounds like this really angry thing that's coming at you. And so built that and then started using it on some productions. They're great for car commercials, great for kind of great for aircraft stuff. And then just anything that we want tons of energy and speed and really tight maneuverability in the types of shots you're wanting to get, they're fantastic for. But one of the things I did was we did this hydrofoil boat race thing. I'm out there I've got 4 minutes-ish because I'm pushing it to the absolute max to keep up with these things. They're going 100 miles an hour. And then there's a certain point where I have to head back to the dock to make it to the dock before the battery dies. And then not only that, but the director, they're always, can you get closer? Can you get lower? Can you get closer? And I'm these boats are, they're spraying water everywhere, and it's only going to take a couple of drops of water in the right place to take this whole thing out. And so for the very last shot of the day after we'd done everything, he was like, I really want you to go between the boats as they're coming at you as low as you can go. So I went out and I was maybe 2 feet off the water, and all I could see these 2 rooster tails coming at me, and they're going 100 miles an hour or more toward me, and I'm going 80 or 90 miles an hour toward them. So you have this,
Intense.
200 something mile an hour overtake speed, and then all of a sudden these rooster tails of water just go zipping by you. It was the most intense thing. But yeah, so in building a drone like that, like I've gone out and tested them extensively and spent hundreds of hours learning how to fly them, because it's like learning to fly a helicopter and aircraft.
Right.
It's everything's connected. If you add more throttle, that changes this, and you have to change your pitch, or you have to change your roll or yaw or anything like that, just to make sure the drone stays stable, because it is not stabilized by itself, which the drones off the shelf at Best Buy are stabilized.
Right.
So it's very intense and a lot, but also I like the challenge.
Sure.
I like the challenge of building them, and then also the challenge of learning how to fly them and fly them well.
Yeah.
To me, I like that stuff. I like learning. I like growing and challenging myself.
Yeah, I mean, I knew the prep had to be crazy, but I couldn't imagine that. Like, not only the creation, but then, having to go through that. Because you're right, like $15,000 camera or whatever, and then like how much you put into the drone, that's insane. Like, but to just know that, and the repercussions, right, of failure, the pressure is insane.
Yeah.
I would probably hope that you have in the contract that there's probably some sort of insurance and or like liability if they want X and it does Y, it's on them. I can only imagine, but like that's just so cool. So I guess, where I'd love to wrap this up is like, for someone that's listening in that wants to create more content, wants to get started, like you've said a lot of great things around failure, the long-term mindset, but where does someone start? Because I know a lot of people, they're like, the timing, right? Like, oh yeah, well, you said COVID was great. Well, more people are on their phones, so they can justify that, right?
Yeah.
Which, if I'm not talking to those people because they're in the wrong mindset anyways.
Yep.
But if you want to start a YouTube channel or you want to start affiliate marketing, what are some of the keys to success that you see needing someone to take to be able to start this path of content creation or this creator world that you live in for themselves?
Well, yeah. On the people that are looking at this, like, well, something happening during COVID, it's easy to look at anything that's overnight success and go, oh, this was their big break. But 99.8% of the time, those people have years and years of something under their belt before they ever got to that point.
Right.
So I don't really think there are any true overnight successes. There was something happening for years before that. Then, serendipitously, something happened. A door opened and they were in the right place at the right time to take that next step. But if they hadn't had those years before, they would have been one of those one-hit wonders and disappeared the next day. But for anybody wanting to start out, I think the big key is one, passion. You've got to find something that you're passionate about and excited about, because that passion will get you through the times when you don't want to get up at 4 a.m. to edit a video, or you're tired of trying to put content out and not seeing lots of people engage with it. Mm-hmm. So passion will get you through those times. And then the other thing is consistency, like consistency of not just you putting content out, but consistency in the content. What is your message in that content? Are you doing landscape photos, and then all of a sudden you do a photo of a baby bottle on a countertop? Your audience is not going to engage with that photo nearly as much as the landscape photos, because they've come to you looking for that topic. Right. So consistency of message is really important and some people talk about niching down or niching down, depending on how you pronounce the word. And to a certain extent, that's important. Of like, you really do want to figure out who are you, who's your audience, who are you talking to. If you're going to do baseball cards, you need to do baseball cards. Right. Don't all of a sudden start talking about pink fuzzy slippers. And I say that, and I use it because I do get emails about people wanting me to review pink fuzzy slippers. I'm like, clearly you don't watch my channel, because it's nothing to do with pink fuzzy slippers. They have no benefit to anybody I talk to. Right. But the consistency is important, and on the content creation side, being consistent is important too, because
like the repetition of what you're putting out.
Yeah. One, it builds your skill set, and helps you progress and grow as a creator, which is really important. But it also gets people into the habit of knowing that they're going to be engaging with you kind of regularly.
On a regular basis, right.
And consistency looks different for different people and different channels. There are channels that can put one video out a month, and because of the quality of the content they produce and because of the topic of the content, people engage with it massively.
Right.
Other channels, like, they almost have to be daily, like the family vlog channels. They have to build that constant interaction and relationship with their audience. And some channels, once a week is great. So yeah, the consistency is really important, and passion, super.
Yeah. I agree with everything you're saying. I will say too, especially for people, because we're complex people, right? Maybe you like baseball cards and fuzzy slippers. Just know that if you do talk about both things, you're narrowing down your audience. And so you have less people probably engaging with you. And that's not a bad thing if you're passionate about baseball cards and fuzzy slippers. Yep. Chances are you're probably not, but just know those things, right? And so I agree, with everything you're saying. And especially too, the cool thing that I think most people are just totally underestimating right now is we're in a world right now where one piece of content can be put on so many platforms and get benefit in many ways.
Yeah.
And we got to think, regardless of what your mindset is on TikTok or anything, but thank you, TikTok, for creating the actual virality around vertical 16:9 footage. Because one piece of content on YouTube Reels, Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, TikTok, Pinterest can go massively beneficial for you for a starter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And just knowing that's available. Because if you would have looked back even 2 years ago, videos on Facebook probably had to be different than videos on Instagram and vice versa.
Yeah.
And that was a lot more work to put that content together versus right now. So from a timing standpoint, I'm really trying to encourage people get going now and putting it in on all those places.
Yeah. That is huge right now. There's a massive opportunity with short form content on all the platforms because they're all competing for the same space. And it is weird too, because they're all very different platforms. They have different age group demographics that are their primary users and different focuses. I did this one thing where I dove an FPV drone down into an ice cave
I saw
out there, and on TikTok, it went massively viral, 2.5 million views within a week and a half. On Instagram, it also I wouldn't say it went viral, but it was definitely my highest viewed video.
Right.
Facebook, it did almost nothing, which is just bizarre, and it's and that's where right now there is a huge opportunity because all the platforms are looking at vertical short form content and really pushing it out there to compete for people's attention.
Right. And I encourage that you put it on all places, right? Regardless if it gets no views or some, because I've seen the same exact thing. I don't have the successive views like you have but I have seen, I've just recently started adding to Facebook Reels because I didn't even know that was a thing until just recently. And and I know it is newer. I know Facebook is probably the latest to the game. But a video that I put on Instagram that it was ridiculously successful, not successful on Facebook, and then vice versa. I just released a video the other day and it's only gotten 500 views on Instagram. It's at 15,000 views on Facebook.
Yeah.
Same piece of video, nothing different other than putting it on the platform.
Yep.
And that's why I encourage everyone just to be putting it on all.
Yeah.
And then just going where the audience takes you, essentially, as long as you're consistent, as long as you're passionate. But then to a thing that you said too is analyze what you're doing, right? Why are people liking it more on Facebook? What are you editing it? And just constantly trying new things and never getting discouraged with that, I think is such an important part.
Yeah. And actually that's probably the third piece of advice I would have for people, because it can be so overwhelming when you're just starting out of you're learning how to use a camera, you're learning how to use lighting, audio, all the stuff that you have to learn just to figure out how to produce a short form piece of video can be hours of work, setting up a room and lighting and everything else. And while there are lots of great tutorials on YouTube, including on my channel about how to do that stuff, shameless plug.
And where is that? Jake Sloan at
Look
YouTube?
up Jake Sloan on any social media. I'll pop right up there. So, and what I did was after every video, I would watch the video just myself, watch it, maybe a day or two after I posted it, just to look at it with fresh eyes and analyze it, and then pick one thing that I wanted to do better on the next video, whatever that is. And if you do that, yes, it takes time, but after a year, if you look at your video that you produced on January 1 of 2023, and then the video you produce on December 31st of 2023, you will see a massive difference. But you only pick one thing to change or one thing to improve
on the
next video.
I love that so much.
And it gives you a really actionable, very simple step that you need to take of like, yeah, my audio wasn't the best in that one. I'm going to make one thing to improve my audio on the next bit. And then you move on, and you're adding every single video. Then you're adding something to your skill set that is going to help you take the next step and continuing to level up.
That is such a good piece of advice. I read this recently. I can't remember where it was, but I did it, and it was a really powerful tool for that same exact thing. I read, it was like, okay, just take a video camera and record a 5-minute impromptu something.
Yeah.
And just record it. And then there was a 3-step process after you recorded it. And I did this, and it has changed how I've produced content, how I've spoke, my hand signals, everything. And it was really valuable. And so record that 5-piece. And then what you need to do is set the video down, just hit play and listen to your audio.
Yep.
Just listen to it.
Yeah.
How do you talk? What's the cadence in your voice? Where you're pausing? And I took a couple things that are like, ooh, I didn't like that. Ooh, I really like that. And that was like, okay, there's one thing. Then take the video and put it on mute and watch it.
Yeah.
Watch your body language, watch your eye contact, watch how you move. Huge, profound takeaways in that. And then the last one, download it, you could put it into Zoom or whatever, transcribe it, and then read it.
Yeah.
Take out the uhs, the ums, like those things. And it took probably like a half an hour to do all 3, but I can tell you, pre that video, then post that video, oh my, like I didn't mind hearing the sound of my voice near as much.
Right.
I didn't mind watching it because like that's the hard part for a lot of people, right? Like what you're saying is
huge.
They're like, oh, I don't want to hear the sound of my voice or, oh, I just hate my mannerisms. Then use it.
Yeah.
And learn from it.
Yeah.
I love that's such a good piece of advice on the one thing. That's so good. Okay. Well, the last thing that I always like to know is there a single piece of advice that was given to you that has been profound in your life?
Probably the thing about passion. And that was given to me by my father-in-law, who at the time wasn't my father-in-law. I was just working with him.
That's probably a whole story in
And
itself.
yeah, there's a massive story behind that because he taught me a lot about excellence and learning and growing as a person, just continually striving to get better. It's way different than perfectionism. And this is a huge conversation that we could have in, an episode in 3 years or something like that if you wanted to. But excellence is that constant drive to just get a little bit better and just continue to grow and challenge yourself as a person, as a creator, whatever you're doing. But he gave me the advice about passion and how passion will get you through those dry, tough times when you don't feel like doing it. There's lots of days I don't feel like going to a gym and working out because I'm tired or because I'm sore or I just climbed a mountain yesterday and I don't want to do it. But that passion to keep myself in good physical shape so that I can do lots of stuff for years, decades, hopefully with my kids. The passion to be able to climb a mountain, get to the top and not be totally out of breath and totally wasted for 30 or 40 minutes till I can talk to a camera without sounding like I'm out of breath and wasted. Like that passion to be able to continue to push myself physically so that I can push myself physically is what keeps me going to the gym early in the morning. The same is true at anything like that passion to be able to get you through the tough times, push you through failures, and keep you going down the path of this is really where I want to head. I think it's probably the most difficult thing to even grasp though, because it is hard to find your passion, to find out what you're passionate about. And I feel like a lot of people don't do it because it takes a lot of work and it can be pretty scary at times. But if you ever do find what you're passionate about and what you love doing, it's not that you're not going to work, but you are really going to enjoy working. And it will get you through the times of last year I flew 150,000 air miles. I don't like traveling that much. I mean, I like traveling, but I don't like traveling that much. I don't like sitting on airplanes that much.
Yeah, no one does.
And going through airports is not enjoyable.
I bet you the benefits, though, of the whatever mileage plan you are at Delta or Alaska Airlines is probably
up
pretty
there in
sweet.
the tier of platinum, whatever. Now.
Yeah, so that's pretty nice.
But the passion, the excitement of even going to places that I wouldn't necessarily go to, but to go there and film is. It does make me excited to go do those things.
Right.
And so, I think that's probably the singular best piece of advice I ever got was finding what I was passionate about and pursuing it.
Right. I think the couple things to unpack in that is that one, there's a lot of people that are 40 and they still don't know what their passion is.
Yeah.
And just consistently trying, you know, because you could use Vera Wang or, Colonel Sanders, right? KFC. He didn't start KFC till he was 65.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't a passion about a lot of things up to the age of 65.
Right.
But 65 to 95 was probably pretty dang sweet.
Yeah.
And so just never giving up, I think that's really an important part in that, because I do think that there are people that find it when they're 18. I know I was, and I was really grateful for that. Chelsea, my wife, hasn't, and she's constantly trying. And so I'm just always proud of her for doing that, because it's not easy continuing to try.
Yeah.
But then the other thing too is understanding that passion isn't always like just loving every single day of your life when you're doing it, like you're talking about.
Right.
I'm really calling that out. Like there's days that suck.
Yeah.
There are days you don't want to do it, but you have to figure out, one, to remind yourself, to be great or to, be the top level of anything. You got to do it when you don't want to.
Yeah.
Right. And just knowing that that's normal and that's okay. And I think that realization, that almost giving peace to it, brings more motivation to the good days.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, it definitely does.
And then I love to know, is there a piece of advice that you find to be cautious, right? Like a bad piece of advice that maybe you've been given or you've heard around, that you caution people to live, because I think that there's a lot of like really, let's say like life coach advice that's thrown out that you're like, you know what, I hear you, but, comma is that, I'd give caution to it.
Yeah, I would say, probably the biggest caution, it kind of goes back to passive income. There are so many people out there going, go after passive income, go after passive income,
Sure.
go after. And I don't necessarily think that they're wrong, but I think way more important than going after income is going after, and it sounds kind of quaint, but happiness.
Right.
Of like, I think we as a society would be much better off if that was our goal.
Right. Happiness.
Yeah. People can be super happy doing things that I would never consider doing.
Correct.
But they're totally happy doing it. And they love their life.
And they're probably bringing a lot of value to that space that you would never.
Right. But as a society, and I've seen it a lot of times where it's like people have gone after certain career paths because of the notoriety or because of the income or because of, maybe their parents push them into it. There's a lot of things that can go after that. But, and they are so unhappy. Mm-hmm. While on the outside, we're looking at them going, man, they're living the dream.
Crushing it.
Like they're crushing. Yeah, they're just killer career and all these accolades or whatever it is. And they hate their life.
Right.
And so I think that especially in the creator economy, when everybody wants to focus on, hey, you can have these 7 side incomes and make, $100,000 a year, because it seems like it's always the 6-figure income thing.
Sure.
It more than that, I would just, that's secondary. Mm-hmm. Happiness and enjoyment is first. And I, especially if I'm speaking to somebody who's younger, that's a lot more difficult to explain.
Right.
As you get older, you realize a lot more how much you want to enjoy the time you have. And, and you have kids, like all of a sudden you want to enjoy the time you have with your kids because that's a limited time. Right. I've got teenagers. I've got one who's, he's going to graduate next year. It's weird. But knowing that as much as I've been able to enjoy my life, enjoy his life and our life together and do things together and just enjoy that time is so much more powerful than me going, no, I want to work to get a great income or build a side business or, have passive income or whatever that is, because, time ultimately is the most valuable thing you have. And if you're not enjoying your time, you really need to reevaluate what you're doing, right? Because it will kill you in the end.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack in that. The first thing, I think Les Brown talked about it, is that more heart attacks happen at 10 a.m. on Monday morning than any other time in the world, when you can look at like actual that. And what happens at 10 a.m.? People are getting to work on a Monday, right? And like it's because they hate what they do. And I totally agree with you. I think it's a net positive for the world. I don't care if you're making 37K, 57K a year and you're a bee farmer or you're a hairdresser or whatever. If you love doing it, the value you bring to the market in that is far greater than anything else. And that's a side note to the fact, though, that in this world we live in, you could be a bee farmer or a hairdresser and create content and create a whole bunch of income streams that come from that and make a lot more money probably.
Oh, yeah.
And it's because I believe in life that we only get, I think money is a transfer of energy.
Yeah.
Is the way that I've started to really associate. The things I have the most energy in are the places I make the most money.
Yeah.
And so if you're passionate about it or you have a lot of energy that you get from it, you tend to earn income as a byproduct of it, but it has to live through that channeling through content, right?
Yeah.
So it's a great thing that you talked about right there. And the passive income thing, I agree with you that there's no we're in real estate, right? So that real estate can be, but we work really hard. There's a lot of stress. There's a price you pay for that, some aspects of it is passive, but there is a lot of stress and anxiety that goes to it. So that's a different form of trade that you're paying for. There are other passive incomes, but it takes so much before it becomes passive. So don't make that the goal. Make the passion towards it, like you're saying, it be the goal.
Yeah.
So, Jake, I'm really grateful for having you on here. This was amazing.
This has been fun. I love it. It's been awesome. Thanks for having me here.
I'm glad to have you. I'm really excited to share it, and we'll definitely have you back.
Awesome.